he got to go play pro volleyball in Switzerland. And he and his wife lived in this alpine ski village where everything was beautiful, and like they used to drink after dinner liqueurs made from herbs in that region, and there were like fancy coffee shops and chocolate shops in the town. They lived on top of a bakery, so they just got really into the whole gourmet, organic, local vibe of the place. But it was super expensive, and apparently playing pro volleyball in Switzerland's not like playing Major League Baseball or something. So they were kind of struggling, and when they found out that there was an Aldi supermarket in Germany, they drove an hour across the border one day and stocked up on groceries and got stuff that they were used to eating at a fair price. And so he was all excited about it. And the next day of practice, he told his Swiss teammates, he's like, "Hey guys, you should drive over to Germany and get a great deal at Aldi's." But the Swiss guys weren't impressed. They were like, "Yeah, Greg, we know it's there, but we don't go because we're from this town. And if you want to live in this town, you got to eat local, you got to buy local, you got to support the local economy because that's how people in our community get by." So it made Greg feel bad, but at the same time, he planted a seed in his mind when he came back to Ohio. He wanted to create some kind of artisanal product and start a business that could collaborate with other local businesses and eventually establish a cool community space. But back then, he didn't know what it was going to be in. So after 2 years in Switzerland, they came back to Ohio, and Greg got a job selling drugs to pig farmers. But for the pigs, though, not for the farmers. So he worked at Pfizer. He was a livestock medicine sales rep. And then, meanwhile, his buddy Dave had stayed in town, and he was selling plumbing supplies and toilets around Columbus. And so, after a while doing boring work, they decided, one of these days we've got to quit our crappy jobs and do something cool. So their first idea was to start a brewery. And in 2006, they started researching and looking around town and saw that there were already like 8 or 9 successful breweries in Columbus, and assumed it was saturated, it was going to be too competitive and they wouldn't make it. But probably in hindsight that was untrue, because now there's like 30 successful breweries and keep opening more, so they must do well. But there weren't any other distilleries, so they decided on a distillery. And Greg's got a chemical engineering degree, so he felt confident he could work the distillation process, but starting a distillery from scratch is difficult and expensive. And so they had to come up with a plan to get their seed money, and they had this big idea to buy a bunch of properties, then they'd flip them, and that would be their startup capital. So in 2007, they bought a bunch of properties, and then they went to flip them in 2008, the market crashed, they lost money instead, so they had to go back to the drawing board. But during that time, they were working on their 4-peel gin recipe, and they felt confident that they had a hit on their hands if they would just keep going. So they got to their watershed moment where they decided, come hell or high water, we're making our dream distillery reality, and nobody can stop us. So that's the origin of the name Watershed. And then at that point, they felt like this guy in the photo walking the tightrope between the Twin Towers in New York, and failure was not an option. So it was just forward or nothing, and they were motivated, but there were still a lot of obstacles in the way, and the big one is that the state of Ohio has very strict liquor laws. And so the first thing they made them do was plop down a lot of cash to get a long-term lease on the land where they were going to produce everything. They had to buy a commercial still from Germany that cost well over $100 grand. They had to make samples of their products, come up with their 5-year business plan, and then go present it all to the State Board of Liquor Control. So they had this meeting coming up with the state board, and it was super important, so they were very nervous about it, and they were expecting an intense and stressful grilling of every detail of their business plan. But they got to the meeting, they gave their spiel. 15 minutes later, the guys from the state were like, "Oh, let's just see what you got." So they tasted the vodka, the 4-peel gin, they liked them, and they thought, okay, it seems like these guys know what they're doing. You have our seal of approval. Here's your permit. You may proceed. So Watershed was officially born then in 2010 when they got their permit, but it was still just those 2 guys that nobody knew who they were. So they had to grab their vodka and 4-peel gin and hit the pavement and go do tastings at lots of bars and restaurants around town. And luckily, that was the time when the craft cocktail craze was picking up steam, and so local mixologists were using 4-peel gin to make fancy cocktails, and people loved them. And then the gin won national awards, so it got favorable press from the Dispatch, Columbus Monthly, 614 Magazine, etc. And then once it got into stores, people started buying it and telling their friends, like, "Hey, there's this awesome new gin, it's made here in Columbus. You should go buy a bottle of 4-peel because it makes the best gin and tonics ever." And then when the restaurant opened, it won a Best New Restaurant Award the first year. Got good reviews right off the bat. So it all started with positive word of mouth locally, and then they were able to parlay that early success into bourbon production. So you can make vodka and gin in a couple days, but you need 4 years at least before you have a bourbon that's good enough to sell to other people. So they just had to plan ahead, go slow, step by step, little by little. And in the beginning, they made a lot of mistakes with bourbon, but learned from them and just kept improving. And so now we're winning national awards for bourbon too. And then fast forward to today, we've become the #1 selling made in Ohio bourbon and gin portfolio in the state of Ohio. So the dreams come true. Now you guys are here to taste it all. So grab a little cup and we'll start with fun. Gin's got to have a majority juniper flavor, so that's juniper berries, and then we also add allspice, cinnamon, and coriander to balance out the pininess of the juniper. And then the gin's called 4-peel gin because it's got lemon, lime, orange, and grapefruit peels in it. And then the whole process starts up here in the pot still. So we add all the botanicals and the base alcohol in here, heat it up, and then once it boils, the vapor travels through that pipe and rises up the first still. So for vodka, we triple distill it, but for gin, we just use this one because the point of boiling everything together in the pot still is to meld the flavor of the botanicals and enhance them. The more you distill any kind of liquor, the more flavor you remove from it, so it's just unnecessary to triple distill the gin. And then the vapor travels through that top pipe and then slowly comes down in condenser oil and turns back into the liquid that you drink. And then so we've been making gin lately, so this is all like the ingredients. So we'll just like dump buckets of it in there and fire it up. And then the whole process takes 24 hours. And so the first thing that comes out is called the head cut. So this is true for any kind of liquor. It's poisonous, it's methanol alcohol that makes people go blind, so we got to get rid of it. But it's not that much, it goes in that bucket. And then the majority of it's called the hard cut, and it goes into a big stainless steel tank, and then it comes out 150 proof. So we dilute it with very pure water to get it to a uniform 88 proof. And then at the end, there's like a viscous residue they call the tail cut. So they either save that for the next batch of gin, or like during COVID, we would like mix it with the head cuts and then hand sanitizer. So gin and vodka we could have done in one day and take across the street and bottle it, but there's a couple different kinds of gin we have that take a little longer. So this is Guild gin. So it's got this pretty gold color because we infuse flowers in it. So after it's distilled, we add chamomile flowers and rose petals into it for 48 hours, and then gives it this nice floral characteristic. And then this is the mash bill for bourbon. So the mash bill is like the recipe or the ingredients for any kind of whiskey. And for bourbon to be bourbon legally, it's got to be 51% corn, made in the USA, and then aged in a charred new oak barrel. And our mash bill is 72% corn, 21% rye, and then the rest is barley. So the whole process starts with a 1,000 pound bag of very finely milled corn. And we add it to this thing, that's the mash tun. So it's like a giant blender. We'll heat up water over here, pump it into there, mix it with the corn. And then there's like a paddle that's constantly stirring up the grains. So then they add enzymes to break down the starches, and that also like stimulates the natural fermentation. So it'll heat up to 190 degrees, and then when that's finished, they just let the corn cool, add 300 pounds of rye flour, repeat the process, and finally add the barley, which like really kicks up the fermentation process. So the mashing run will take like 7 hours, and then when it's done, it's 10% alcohol. They call it distiller's beer. And then pump it into these tanks. These are the fermentation tanks where they have the yeast. So it stays here for 5 days while the yeast is doing its thing, eating up all the sugars. And then when that's ready, they pump it into the back left tank, which is connected to the tall thin bourbon still. So from there, it takes 27 hours to distill 2,100 gallons of mash and turn it into just 350 gallons of what you end up drinking. So there's a lot of input for not that much output. And then all liquor comes off the still clear. So this is bourbon right off the still. This one's 115 proof. It might get up to like 120. But at this point, they call it white dog or white lightning. It's basically just moonshine until you put it in a barrel and age it, because it's the barrel that gives bourbon all the color and most of the flavor. And then this is the original still they had to get from Germany. So the story goes that it arrived in these giant crates from Europe, but it didn't come with any instructions. It just came with these diagrams like IKEA furniture. And so they had to hook it out and figure out how to put it together. It took a long time, but now it can last 100 years. So like this one's the analog side, so there's less moving parts. So it's controlled by steam, like that boiler pumps steam through it. Then they got to adjust knobs and dials and do everything manually. And then the bourbon still is called a continuous still. So it's controlled by a computer that'll like do the cuts for them automatically, and it'll run itself 5 days a week, 24 hours a day. They still have to do some manual stuff, but less. So it's more efficient, but it can be more finicky at the same time too. And if you come during the week,
Basement.
huh? Yeah, you can put this in your basement.
It should fit.
For sure.
Yeah.
I'd get one, but I'll have a basement for it, so.
Yeah.
On the slab.
Homeowners Association would appreciate that, something like that.
Yeah.
Well, my buddy in Key West knows a guy who's trying to sell a still.
Oh, really?
He like put one in some like storage area in Key West and doesn't know what to do with it. But he was like trying to do some bootleg rum or something. And it didn't work out for some reason.
about right.
Yeah.
That's a long
US
drive.
then.
US.
Yeah.
8 hours too.
Yeah.
He wasn't big on logistics, but he was food, yes.
Yeah. You guys ready to go taste some gin?
Heck yeah.
All right, let's go back over there.
Yes.
Yeah, we're nowhere near this one.
A brick house. I don't know if you can technically call this a brick house.
Do you sell your barrels?
Full or empty?
I'm sorry, what?
Full or empty?
Empty.
Yeah. So you can buy them for $175, and people make like a bar or something out of it.
Yeah, that's why I was asking the question. Yeah.
So now there's like about 4,100 barrels in here now. So like this side's full. So now there's like a second half of the warehouse. So the newest stuff's going in there. And then one of the first questions I always get is why do we stack them vertically? Because if you go to a distillery tour in Kentucky, they're always on their side. Like one, because that's their tradition, and two, they have these gigantic brick houses that they just have a lot more room than we have. So we do it vertically to save space, and it just makes it easier logistically to move them around the forklift. But these ones are horizontal because they're different. So this is basically Scotch whiskey, but you're not allowed to call it Scotch because it's made in Ohio, not Scotland. So you got to call it American single malt. And then those are like 8 or 9 years old. And then these horizontal ones are also different. They're used Great Lakes Christmas Ale barrels. So it's our bourbon that was already 4 years old, finishing for 1 year in that barrel, and then we'll release it at Christmas time. So that'll be good.
Sounds like a
Yeah.
good
bottle.
bottle.
I'm gonna be coming back for her.
So yeah, so this, like
Barrel
the
stage.
barrels have a cool story. So they come from this place called Speyside Cooperage in Jackson, Ohio. So it's like a Southern Ohio success story because it had been a successful cabinet factory for like 100 years, and it used to employ the whole town and run 3 shifts a day. But as manufacturing was leaving the U.S. in the 80s, it was like gradually going downhill. So by 2015, it was dead. And then this Speyside Cooperage from Scotland got an opportunity from Jobs, Ohio, to convert everything over from cabinetry to bourbon barrel production. And so now they're back up to running 3 shifts a day, and they've got nearly 400 employees, and they keep growing because there's more demand than there is supply for new bourbon barrels, because the law is every time you make a new bourbon, it's got to go into a new oak barrel. So as they're making them, they char them for us on the inside, and like before the top's on, it'll roll down a conveyor belt and stop in front of a flamethrower basically, and then scorches the inside. So there's 5 different char levels, and we've mostly used the highest one, level 5, because the theory is there's more potential to exchange flavor between the wood and the whiskey the more you char it. And so nowadays, like the last 2 or 3 years, our distillate has gotten better, and so we also are using like levels 2, 3, and 4 to enhance the flavors of our blends. And like these ones say medium toast or heavy toast, so that's supposed to be like a slow burn that's meant to give the bourbon a roasted over the fire marshmallow kind of taste. So it sounds like that would be awesome, but we only started doing it in October, so I'm gonna have to wait 4 years to know exactly what it tastes like, but I think it'll turn out good. And then this is cool too. So this is the soak line. So over the course of 4 or 5 years, it's aging in here. Wow. The heat rises and falls throughout the year, and then the wood expands and contracts, and so it sucks the liquid this far into the wood where the exchange of the flavor molecules occur. So the white oak's got chemicals like vanilla in that give bourbon vanilla flavor. The charring produces the caramel notes. The tannins give bourbon the pretty color, and then you can have lactones that might give bourbon toasted coconut flavors if you can taste them, and then so it's just all a cool natural process. So like what makes it taste good most of the time is really the wood, and it's best exemplified in single barrel releases. So like there's one guy whose job is to know where all the barrels are, how old they are, when they need to get opened and tasted and tested, and how to blend them. Wow. So when he finds one that's distinctive, we'll make it into a single barrel release, and each each barrel tastes different because like when we open them, they can end up being subtly different or drastically different. So when he finds one that's like really distinctive, that becomes a single barrel release. But it's all due to like the content of the wood. So maybe like this wood has more vanilla in, and this wood has more lactones, and that wood can have more tannins, and this one maybe comes from trees in a forest in a different region. So it all just works together to produce a different flavor profile in each barrel. So that's what's cool about bourbon and why single barrels are in demand, because like as like the bourbon will go in the barrel like 115 to 120 proof, but as it's aging, it's evaporating too. So we'll lose like 20 to 25%, and then the alcohol content rises to usually like the average single barrel release is 127 proof. So with those releases, you get like the full potency, the full flavor, and those are the ones that are really special. And so that's all called the angel shear too. It's like it's evaporating, and like there's a little bit of leakage. So all that you lose is like the esters drifting up to the angels in heaven. But and then when it leaks too, it's normal and natural. So there's like the sugars self-seal, but there's no glue or nails. It's all held together by pressure like an old-time schooner ship, you know. So the wood just swells and then keeps the liquid inside. And the char helps too. So now, the first thing we're going to taste is apple brandy. So not bourbon. Brandy's got to be 100% fruit juice. So this comes to us as apple cider from a farm in Illyria, and then we get it here, ferment it, distill it, and then age it for 2 years in a used bourbon barrel. So it's oaky and appley and.
Ooh.
Thank you.
Smells really good.
Smells like apple juice.
Yeah.
Yeah, you'll like that lower proof. That's good.
That's really good.
You taste like Honeycrisp apples.
That with like apple cider.
Yeah.
The first bourbon we're going to taste is our 4-year blend. So it's a blend of like any number of 4-year barrels, plus it's got 5 and 6-year-old barrels in it too. And then every year we release a bourbon that's been finished in a used apple brandy barrel for 2 years. So that's a 6-year release, and then some of it ends up in here too. So even though there's 5 and 6-year-old bourbon in it, the law is you got to put the youngest year on the label, so we call it the 4-year blend. And then before I pour it though, have you guys ever watched a YouTube show or something and they're talking about tasting bourbon and detecting notes of leather and tobacco and hay and butterscotch and all this stuff? So like, you kind of use your imagination, but like the obvious flavor notes are vanilla and caramel. And then because our mash bill has a lot of rye, it's kind of spicy. So you might get like black pepper or cinnamon notes at the back end especially. So to get more out of it, you can swirl the bourbon under your nose, inhale through your nose with your mouth open a bit, put it in your mouth, make sure it hits all parts of your tongue, especially the side. If you're really motivated, like swish it and chew it, which they call the Kentucky chew. And then like swallow it. You can kind of like inhale through your mouth like as you're swallowing, and then that can intensify it. And then take a normal sip and see if you can come up with any adjectives. Or you can just drink it normal and say I like it or I don't like it.
Every step of it.
Thank you.
Do you want me to get water?
No, you're good.
I might need water though.
Oh.
What are you getting? I'm getting caramel.
Moonshiners were trying to pass off their swill as aged bourbon, and they wanted to get that color. So they would add prune juice or tobacco spit or rust or crushed up ants, all this disgusting stuff. So like the old school Kentucky bourbon producers got together and went to the government and said, hey, you guys got to help regulate these moonshiners out of our market. And the government told them, sure, we'll be happy to help you. We'll regulate you, we'll tax you, it'll be a wonderful relationship. So the Bottled and Bond Act of 1897 was born, and it still says that you've got to age the bourbon at least 4 years. You've got to bottle it at exactly 100 proof. And then the most important part is you've got to produce everything in your own facility from beginning to end. So that goes from like, mashing, distilling, storage in a bonded warehouse, to even bottling, the whole 9 yards. So it matters because it's common for small distilleries to buy thousands of gallons of whiskey from a big distillery, then blend it with some of their own and put their own label on it. But if you want to use the bottled and bond distinction on your label, you're not allowed to do that. So for us, we'll produce like 15 or 20 or so barrels a year, set those aside, and then only those can become the bottled and bond blend. And then to get the bond, we had to go to the Federal Tax and Trade Bureau, and then they send an inspector and make sure we do all the steps right. So nowadays there's about 5,000 distilleries in the U.S., but not that many bother to do the whole process. So it's just become this mark of quality that when you see it in the store, you know it's good.
So this isn't a distillery exclusive. You can find this in the stores.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
You light on me, Emma. Thank you. Love it light.
Ooh. You get that red fruit in there. Look at that.
I swigged mine out with water if you want to get this one.
Oh, that doesn't. I don't like that.
Oh, well.
Ooh.
So what differences do you guys notice?
Tastes good.
Ooh, get a little more oak in there.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was getting like red fruit on the nose too.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I don't know if it's the apple brandy still in there somewhere,
Probably.
but I was like, that's. But you get a lot of oak in there. I like that.
Because it's just a result of it being a smaller batch and a more
Yeah.
focused process.
I like that one
This
a
one
lot.
is called Uncut Unfiltered. So this is
Yes.
the one that won a national award last year. And so this is a blend of, it depends on the batch, but it's like an average of like 10 barrels per batch. And so the guy whose job it is to do the blending and like take care of the warehouse and know where everything is, like he'll find his 10 favorite barrels that are between 5 and 9 years old and then blend them into this. And so the uncut part means we don't dilute it at all, so it's 122 proof, so watch your step. And then the unfiltered part means that we don't filter it, but like when we empty the barrel for the first time, it goes into a stainless steel tank, and then there's a hole on top of the tank that we cover with a cheesecloth, so when we pour the barrel into it, it catches the carbon that comes from the inside of the char. And then after that, there's normally like another round of filtering before they bottle it, but for this one, we don't do that extra round of filtering. So you get more of the barrel flavor, the char flavor, but also like the full intensity of the grains. And even though it's 122 proof, it's a lot smoother than it sounds like it would be.
Thank you.
Go light on me. You two are warriors, by the way.
Yeah.
Good for you.
I drink bourbon quite a bit.
Good for
Yeah.
you.
He's a bourbon connoisseur.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
Then he played rugby all day too. So
I did play rugby all day in the
he goes up
sun.
and down and down.
Yeah, giant bruises all over myself. This is the one I've been waiting for. More
The last
bourbon.
one we're doing here is our pre-mixed old fashioned. So this is a cocktail in a bottle. It starts with the 4-year blend, and then we add Ohio cherry juice, bitters, and a little simple syrup. So we also dilute it from 90 proof to 70 proof to make it super smooth, and it just goes down really easy. It's ready to just bring to a party and put over ice.
Ooh.
So you can easily have 3
you.
or 4 of these before it catches up to you.
Oh,
Yeah, that smells good.
I feel like it smells like an old fashioned. It feels like you
Yeah.
can smell the orange bitters. Like
It's cocktail in a bottle.
yeah, I know that's
So-
wild. I've never had it like a pre-made old fashioned before. I tend to stay away from them. Holy shit, that's good.
Yeah.
That tastes like an old fashioned I get at a bar. That's good.
Our own secret spice blend, but it's got to begin by harvesting walnuts at the summer solstice, and then they steep them in a base alcohol, add their spice blend and sugar. So we'll steep our mix and our vodka for 6 months, and then age it in a bourbon barrel for a year. So that makes it different than how they do it in Italy. But the reason we started doing it has a cool story, and it's because of this guy named Charlie. And so every bottle says thanks Charlie. And he's a retired guy that lives around here, and he makes infused Italian drinks like limoncello. He's got one with fennel. And when the bar first opened, he would come in with mason jars of this black stuff looking for Greg, and he'd be like, "Hey Greg, you want to taste my Nocino?" And I guess Greg was blowing him off for a long time because he didn't believe it was safe to drink, just didn't know what Nocino was. So finally the guy comes in one day and he's like, "Okay Greg, been coming in here a long time. Today's the day you're going to taste my Nocino and like it because I use your vodka and my family's secret recipe to make it. So it's safe to drink, it's delicious, you're going to enjoy it." So Greg tasted it, he loved it, and then Charlie invited him over to his annual Nocino making party. And he lives close by, and he's got a couple big old black walnut trees in his property, and so Greg went over there, he's having a good time, and Charlie showed him how to harvest the walnuts and shared the recipe with them and taught him the process. And then after dinner, Charlie served everybody a bowl of vanilla bean ice cream and then poured no chino on top. So after Greg tasted that, he was totally sold. He was like, okay, you got me, Charlie. Ready to buy your secret recipe. How much you want? And Charlie says, Greg, you don't get it. The whole time I've been going in your bar and talking to you, it's not because I'm just going to try to make money off you. I'm happily retired. I've got everything I need. But what I really like nowadays is somebody to make no for me because I'm getting tired of doing it all by myself in the kitchen. And more importantly, I'm getting old and I want somebody to carry on the tradition. So if you agree to do it the right way, I'll just give you the recipe and everybody will be happy. So that's how our Chino was born.
Wow.
Yeah, like, I need the scoop, right?
Does anybody else have a favorite thing today?
The vodka was amazing.
That uncut, unfiltered.
Whatever this mix is, it's amazing.
Yeah. The Chino's good. It's not something you can taste like.
Yeah, I wouldn't do that at the end of the day.
It's amazing.
Yeah, it was awesome.
The best part is.
I love that though.
So you can taste it back.
So now you guys know that as bourbon is aging, some of it gets offered up to the angels in heaven. So if you want to leave a tour guide share before you go, give thanks and praises to the Most High. That's all I got for you. If you guys want like an extra sample of your favorite thing, just let me know.
Awesome.
Yeah.